GO-GO-GADGET scripted intro. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're tackling a legend. This 1/6 scale Inspector Gadget is a brilliant modern reimagining sculpted by Henrique Nascimento and available through CA3D Studios. He's got that classic silhouette we grew up with, but with enough detail to make a mad agent sweat. We're going to start off with the base here. Polished bone is what I used as the white color for the smoke. It's just an off-white. You could have used any off-white here, deck tan, ivory, anything like that. You just want to have sort of like a soft white light, and then I came up underneath it with Citadel Contrast Apothecary White, which is like a grayish blue, soft, smoky, dusty kind of blue. Seemed to fit here. Now we're back at the paint desk. I'm starting the base coat with these rocks with a Vallejo Black. I know, it's absolutely riveting content. You're probably sitting there on the edge of your seat, heart pounding, watching pigments dry. Truly the peak of 80s action cinema right here. Okay, enough of that. Go-Go-Gadget, time skip. Through the magic of editing, we've just skipped the boring stuff and moved straight to the dry brushing. A little bit more boring stuff. I'm starting with a mid-tone gray, catching the raised textures to give these stones some life. It's like turning a low-budget cartoon background into a high-definition masterpiece. And then next I'm going to layer on some stone gray to really pull out that grit. And then after that I'm going to finish with a light touch of white on the sharpest edges. It gives the rocks that crisp, defined look, perfect for a bumbling detective to trip over while he's looking for clues in the wrong direction. Presto! From black blob to a geological wonder surrounded by smoke and fog in what looks like mere seconds to you, but was actually like half an hour to me. To finish it off, I worked in some earthly browns into the shadows. It breaks up the monochrome and gives the scene some grit. Now it looks less like a studio set and more like a Metro City back alley, perfect for an accidental investigation. Now let's talk about the silver, and I do mean talk about it because I spent enough time brushing this on to qualify for a pension. I went through half my collection of silvers, shout out to the fallen soldiers on my desk, until I found the perfect tone that screamed cybernetic law enforcement. I know what you're thinking, wouldn't an airbrush would have finish that in about 30 seconds? And the answer is yes it would have, and I don't know what I was thinking. But you know what they say in the hobby world, anything you can airbrush, you can brush on manually. You just have to waste significantly more minutes of your fleeting life doing it. Well, it got a little dark, didn't it? Sorry about that. This message was supposed to be lighthearted and not a reminder of our inevitable march toward the end of the hobby bench in the sky. Wow, let's pull it back. The benefit here was the control with the brush. By hand brushing these various silvers, I'm making sure every spring and piston and GO-GO-GADGET copter blade gets the personal attention it deserves. It's a labor of love for sure. Now here's a top secret trick. I'm coating all the metallics with a Tamiya Black Panel Liner. It's the ultimate shortcut. Flows right into the recesses, instantly defining the mechanical parts, giving them the depth without all the grunt work. It's cheap, it's fast, it makes these gadgets look like they were actually built in a lab and not just some toy factory. While the coat gets all the glory, the pants are what really tie this crime-fighting ensemble together. I'm starting with a solid base coat of Oxford blue. It's sophisticated professional color, which is ironic considering the person wearing them spends half his time tangled in his own limbs. To get that modern depth, I like to work a blue-black into the deepest shadows. You want to focus this on under the legs there and up behind the knees and up along the edges there. And then I cover the entire thing with an aethermatic blue just to give it that pop of turquoise that it needs at the end. Next, we're tackling the two most important items in Gadget's wardrobe, the trench coat and the fedora. Fashion-wise, it's a one-trick pony, so we're going to treat both pieces in the same way, starting with a solid neutral gray base coat. It's perfect for blending into the background color. Too bad he's usually making enough noise to wake up the whole city. And then to keep the modern sculpt from looking too flat, we're going to add a dark gray underneath and some light gray on the raised edges of all of those pieces. We're heading down to the ground floor for the boots now, starting with a base coat of Rhinox hide. It's a deep, rich brown that gives Gadget a sturdy foundation, crucial for a man who spends 40% of his time being propelled into the air by springs or skates. And then for the soles, I'm bringing back my absolute favorite, Vallejo Black. Honestly, at the rate I'm going, I really should have bought stocks in this color years ago. Between the base rocks and these boots, I'm basically single-handedly keeping the Vallejo factory doors open. If you see their stock prices jump this week, you'll know why. Now we're moving on to the gloves. I'm using a red leather here, setting it apart from the shoes. It's a classic pop of color, while feeling a bit more modern tactical. It is a great tone, but as I sit here in the editing area, I'm realizing I kept in an obscene amount of footage of me painting these hands. Seriously, why is there so much glove footage here? I couldn't tell you. Bad life choices, some sort of obsession with digital dexterity. It's a mystery that even Gadget couldn't solve. I'm just watching myself go over these knuckles for the 10th time, wondering where it all went wrong. Hopefully, you guys will find the repetitive motion of my brushstroke soothing rather than a reason to hit that unsubscribe button. Moving on to the strap on the hat there. I know this should have been gray. I knew that as I was painting it brown, but I decided to go with it anyway. Just because something's supposed to be a color doesn't mean it has to be. You can paint things whatever color you'd like. Time to go in and dry brush all those leather parts to give them some weathered character. My strategy here is a bit of opposites attract. I'm dusting the light browns with darker shades and hitting the dark browns with something light. It's a chaotic dance of pigments, but it really pulls out the texture of the sculpt. And let's not forget the accessories. I'm bringing in a third shade of brown for the belt and the strap on his coat. You'd think that with this much leather, he'd be more of a biker than a detective. But it was the 80s, and we didn't ask questions. We just watched the helicopters come out of his hat. This extra tone ensures the belt doesn't just disappear into the gray coat. It's all these subtle shifts in browns that make the model feel complete. It's the difference between a toy and a high-end collectible. Or in Gadget's case, the difference between I'm an officer of the law and I'm currently tangled in my own belt buckle. With the leather finished, we are officially one Wowsers away from the finish line. And here's me painting those soles with the black. I already talked about that, didn't I? I'm getting ahead of myself earlier on, I guess. Just consider this just a happy accident, I guess. And now you get to see what I already talked about earlier. That's fantastic. That's embarrassing. And going in for the tie, I'm going to use, you guessed it, that same black because it was in that little palette tin thing and I just wanted to use it up, I guess. And then I dry brush some black over the leather on the jacket. To finish off the hardware, I'm going to hit all the buttons and buckles with a Pro-Acryl dry silver. It's got really great coverage and it has a nice heavy metal sheen to it. Now look, you could use a different silver if you wanted to. You could use whatever you think looks great. Or you could use this. Whatever. I'm not the chief of police. I'm not here to give you an assignment. At this stage of the build, we're just looking for those final pops of light that catch the camera. Whether you go in for a high shine chrome or a muted steel, the goal is just to make sure Gadget doesn't look like he's held together by gray plastic and hope. Though knowing him, hope is probably a primary component of his internal circuitry. Now we're onto the skin tones, and I'm starting with my usual recipe, some magentas and then reds tucked into the shadows. It looks a bit alarming at first, but it'll all work out, I promise. Over that, I'm layering a mid-range flesh tone base to bring out the character and the sculpt, and then I'm going to flood the recesses with the Reichland flesh shade. To wrap up the face, I'm going to come back in with a lighter flesh color for those highlights, hitting the tip of the nose and the cheekbones and the chin, that kind of thing. Now don't forget the neck. This is where all the magic and the machinery happens. I'm going to go back in with that Pro-Acryl dark silver to cover all the exposed cybernetic bits. It's the same stuff I used on the buckles because consistency is key. Or maybe I just didn't want to open another bottle of paint. You can decide. Deck Tan's going to give us that perfect off-white base that reads as clean linen under the studio lights. It's a subtle and a professional look that doesn't blow out the contrast of the face. It's the kind of logic Penny would use while Gadget's busy trying to figure out which button on his sleeve dispenses the toothpaste. I had to give this a couple coats of Deck Tan because it didn't cover up quite well enough. Why not use a white, you think? Because I never like to use pure white on anything really. If you go straight to pure white, you've got nowhere to go for the highlights and your model ends up looking like a ghost in a trench coat. And here's a quick look at the finished face. I'm just showing you the end result here because, let's be honest, trying to film me painting pupils is pretty much a lost cause. My old eyes need to be so close to the resin that my magnifying lamp and my forehead would be the only things on the screen. Not exactly the GO-GO-GADGET macro shot you were looking for, but it is what it is. And that's just about it. The 1/6 scale Inspector Gadget is almost complete. Massive thanks again to CA3D Studios and Henrique Nascimento for such a stellar sculpt. It was a blast to paint, even if I did make some questionable workflow choices along the way. If you enjoyed watching me struggle with metallics and avoid my wet palettes for I don't know what reason, do me a favor and hit that like and subscribe button, and that would help me out a lot. Go ahead and share this with everyone you know, and a pro tip, even if your friends or family claim they don't like watching paint tutorials, just open the video on their phone and walk away. The phone will just play the video. They don't have to watch it, but the algorithm doesn't need to know that. A view is a view, and I've got more paint to buy.